Hello there. In this review we're going to compare two very expensive lenses, the Canon RF 15-35mm f2.8 L IS USM and the Canon RF 85mm f1.2 L USM. Purchasing either of these lenses represents a large investment, so if you want to learn what both of these lenses are good at and what their flaws are, this video is for you. Let's start by discussing aperture and focal length. The Canon RF 15-35mm lens has an aperture of f2.8, whereas the Canon RF 85mm lens boasts a maximum aperture of f1.2. The bigger number doesn't actually indicate a better lens, so in this case the RF 85mm lens takes the lead. The wider aperture of f1.2 allows in more light, making it ideal for capturing sharp images in low light conditions. Contrary to what one might assume, a lower f number means the lens has a wider aperture and therefore is able to capture more light. Regarding millimeters, the numbers indicate the focal length of the lens. The 15-35mm refers to its focal range, meaning the lens can zoom from a focal length of 15mm up to 35mm. On the other hand, the 85mm lens is a fixed focal length, meaning the lens has a fixed magnification and cannot zoom in or out. Which one is better in this regard? Prime lenses, like the Canon RF 85mm lens, tend to produce sharper images due to their fixed focal length. Zoom lenses like the Canon RF 15-35mm offer more versatility with their ability to zoom in and out. Different focal lengths like 15mm, 35mm and 85mm produce distinct results as they each have a unique level of distortion. In essence, different focal lengths alter the image in different ways. Also, the 85mm lens will be more zoomed in than the 15-35mm one. That means that the 15-35mm lens can fit more in frame when compared to a photo captured with the 85mm lens taken from the same spot. So why is a fixed lens all you need for portraits? Wouldn't a zoom lens be more versatile? The unique distortion characteristics of different focal lengths also impact the appearance of subjects in the photo. For example, a person's face will look slightly different when captured at 35mm versus 85mm, even with the photographer stepping back to compensate for the added zoom of the 85mm lens. Over time, 85mm has become widely recognized as the ideal focal length for capturing portraits, as it produces the most flattering representation of the subject's face. However, this is not a hard and fast rule, and you may choose to experiment with other focal lengths if you wish. Now, both of these can actually be used for portraits, as you can see, but 85mm is generally what you want. The 85mm lens also has a further advantage due to both its longer focal length and the fact that it can open up to f1.2, and that is bokeh. You can get a much nicer, richer background blur with the RF 85mm lens than with the 15-35mm lens, and that counts a lot in portraits. Okay, so which focal length is better? Well, it depends on what you want to do. For portraits, the RF 85mm lens wins hands down. For other stuff, it depends on what you want to take photos of when you're wandering around. We'll discuss a bit later in the review what each lens is specifically good at, but speaking of wandering around, how portable are these lenses? The Canon RF 15-35mm lens is 126.8mm long, approximately 4.99 inches, 88.5mm in diameter, approximately 3.48 inches, and weighs 840 grams, approximately 1.85 pounds. Meanwhile, the RF 85mm lens is 117.3mm long, approximately 4.62 inches, 103.2mm in diameter, approximately 4.06 inches, and weighs approximately 1.2 kilograms, or 2.63 pounds. Okay, so the RF 85mm lens is beefier. What is their build quality like? Honestly, both are marvelously built. They are by far some of the nicest lenses I've ever held, and given the astronomical price tag, I'm not surprised. By the way, if you want to see how much they cost in your country, I have affiliate links down below where you can check them out. Okay, so now that we've talked about the lens's convenience and adaptability, let's take a closer look at their image capabilities. First, we'll examine the minimum focusing distance, which can be confusing for those new to photography. Think of it this way: you want to take a picture of a flower up close. However, as you move closer to the flower, the camera stops focusing. This happens because you are too close to the subject and the lens can no longer physically focus on it. In simple terms, a lens with a shorter minimum focusing distance allows you to get closer to the subject. The reason for this is that, just like the human eye, a lens must maintain a certain distance from the subject to be able to focus. So when choosing a lens, it's important to consider its minimum focusing distance. For example, the 15 to 35mm lens has a minimum focusing distance of 28 cm or approximately 11.02 inches, while the Canon RF 85mm f1.2 lens requires a minimum distance of 85 cm, approximately 2.79 feet. I understand that the concept of minimum focusing distance can be confusing, especially for those new to photography. That's why I wanted to clarify it for you and help avoid any frustration. With that out of the way, let's now talk about sharpness. Budget lenses often exhibit uneven sharpness, with the center of the image appearing clearer than the edges. However, this is not a major concern as most subjects are typically centered in the frame. It is also important to keep in mind that the difference in sharpness between the center and the edges only becomes noticeable when zoomed in significantly. The good news is the high-end lenses we're discussing don't have this issue. Their photos are evenly sharp across the entire frame. Next, let's talk about vignetting. This occurs when the corners of an image appear slightly darker than the center. While this is technically considered a flaw, some photographers actually like the effect of vignetting in their photos, particularly for portraits. The darkened corners can direct the viewer's focus to the lighter center, where the subject's face is usually positioned. It also gives the image a three-dimensional appearance and thus adds depth. However, these high-end lenses don't experience vignetting, although I personally enjoy a bit of it in my portraits. Another factor to keep in mind is chromatic aberration, which can sometimes appear in photos taken with these lenses under certain conditions. Chromatic aberration can appear as a blue, green, or magenta hue along straight lines in photos taken in low light. While it is a lens imperfection, it can give photos a unique touch and often goes unnoticed by the general public. However, these high-end lenses do not have this issue. In fact, the RF 85mm lens even has blue spectrum refractive optics, or BR, which reduces chromatic aberration. Next up, let's talk about image stabilization. The RF 15 to 35mm lens does have it, but the RF 85mm lens does not. Now, fret not, for there is hope. You see, the RF system has a special 12-pin connection, which allows for loads of data to flow between the lens and the body. If you have a Canon R5, for example, which does have in-body image stabilization, you'll not only be able to use it in order to stabilize the 85mm lens, but if you use it with the 15 to 35mm lens, you get even more stabilization. On this note, the 15 to 35mm does have a slight problem with IS, which I want to draw your attention to. When zoomed all the way out, with IS enabled on both the body and the lens, you will notice some very visible warping around the centers of the image as it is being stabilized. I believe this has been reduced in newer firmware patches, but if you want to correct this, just zoom the lens a little bit to around 20mm or 24mm and the warping will no longer be visible. Before we continue on to the next chapter, let's talk about the autofocus performance of these lenses. So they both have USM motors, and needless to say, their performance is impeccable. In fact, because I film a lot of slow motion B-roll, I actually ended up going in my R5 settings and actually slowed down the autofocus a little bit so it looks more cinematic. Generally speaking, in cinematography, slower AF equals better. By the way, if you're finding this video to be helpful, don't forget to leave a like. Right, so there are pros and cons to both, especially in regard to autofocusing. So what cameras can I mount them on? The answer is in the name. Both lenses can be mounted on RF cameras such as the Canon R, R5, R6 and so on. As a quick side note, I've reviewed quite a few Canon cameras on this channel, including the R and R5, link down below for the playlist or click the card in the top right corner. In terms of vlogging, one would work fantastically well and the other not so much. The 15 to 35mm lens not only has the built-in IS, but it's also relatively wide, allowing you to easily fit in frame when the camera is handheld. On the other hand, the 85mm lens is just far too zoomed in. Attempting to vlog handheld with it would result in an image that is too zoomed on your face. Also, it has no IS, which is a shame. Okay, so the 85mm lens isn't ideal for handheld vlogging. What if I just want to sit down and place my camera on a tripod? Would that actually work? If you plan to sit down and place your camera on a tripod, the 85mm lens would be a better choice than the RF 15 to 35mm lens, though both would actually work. The RF 85mm f1.2 allows in more light, enabling filming in dimly lit environments, and it also creates more bokeh, that blurred background that everyone loves. The RF 15 to 35mm lens also allows in plenty of light, but you won't get the same amount of bokeh. On a side note, the RF 15 to 35mm would require less room, as you'd be able to have it closer to you compared to the RF 85mm, which definitely needs a bit more space. Okay, so what are these lenses actually designed for? When it comes to portraits, the 85mm lens wins hands down. You can do portraits with it, as outlined earlier, but the 85mm is just better at it. What if I want to do street photography? Both would work, though bear in mind that either of these lenses will attract loads of attention. This is not only because of their physical size, but also because they look incredibly pro, especially when coupled with a Canon R5 or similar. If you're going to take these outside and walk around, I'd strongly recommend you do not do it by yourself, as you will very easily attract unwanted attention. Whenever I use my setup, it's never on a busy street or anything like that. It's always in a forest or more remote locations. Okay, what if I want to do product photography? For product photography, I would actually recommend the RF 15 to 35mm lens. I actually use this lens for most of my B-roll nowadays, and it's what I filmed the B-roll of the RF 85mm lens on. So it not only works great for product photos, but also for product videos. Right, what about landscape photos? Again, either will work, but I suppose most people would be inclined to choose the 15 to 35mm lens. How about fashion photography? Definitely the 85mm lens, unless you want to mix in some handheld videos, in which case the 15 to 35mm would be a good compromise. If you have a Canon R5, the in-body image stabilization would help a lot with the video. If you're also going to slow the footage down, the 85mm would actually work, but it won't be as smooth as the 15 to 35mm. What about documentary style shooting? For that, I would say that the 15 to 35mm lens would be better. The IS provides smoother footage, and the fact that you can zoom in a bit can be very helpful. What if I want to capture sports or wildlife? The 85mm lens would be better, though neither of them is designed for that. They're just not zoomed in enough. What if I want to capture events or weddings? In that case, both lenses can be used, depending on the desired shot. If you want to capture larger groups, the RF 15 to 35mm lens is more suitable due to its ultra-wide field of view. For detailed shots, the RF 85mm lens is the better choice, as it provides a more zoomed-in perspective without the need to go too close to the subject. If you're looking for a more general lens that can handle various photography styles, the RF 15 to 35mm is clearly the more versatile one of the two. It is my main lens, and it's what I usually have mounted either on my Canon R or R5. How easy are they to use? In terms of handling and ease of use, both lenses are very premium and a joy to use. They both obviously have manual focus rings, which are smooth, and the RF 15 to 35mm also has a zoom ring. In addition to that, they also have a programmable ring, which can be assigned to various functions like changing ISO, for example. I personally don't like using it, as I'm concerned I might accidentally hit it during a shoot and change my settings, but it is a really nice option to have. Right, so how long can I expect them to last? Both lenses have metal mounts, which bodes well for their longevity. When it comes to weather sealing, both lenses are protected from dust and splashes, which is great. When I buy a new lens, I always add a UV filter to it as an extra layer of protection for the lens element. Both of these lenses have a Sigma ceramic UV filter that stays on at all times. As soon as I purchased each, the filter was attached. Although the filter is somewhat pricey, costing around 10% of the cost of the 15-35mm lens, I believe it's a worthwhile investment. This also eliminates the need for lens caps, although they can still be used if preferred. If you do want to mount a filter on either of these lenses, you'll need to know their filter size, which is 82mm for both lenses. This is a crucial aspect to keep in mind while buying filters, as it is different from the lens's focal length. I remember the first time I bought filters for my lenses, I thought the focal length was the filter size, so when purchasing a UV filter for my 50mm lens, I ended up with filters I couldn't actually use. Hopefully this bit of information will save you that expense. In conclusion, which one should you buy? Okay, so this is a bit of a tough decision. Let's make it a bit easier by figuring out which camera you have or which you intend on buying. Will it be something like the R5, which has built-in image stabilization? If so, the lack of IS on the RF 85mm lens doesn't matter quite as much, as the camera stabilization will somewhat compensate for the lens's lack. Next up, what do you want to use it for? Is it mainly portraits? If so, the RF 85mm lens is your best bet. It's basically designed for that purpose. On the other hand, do you want something more versatile? Do you perhaps want to do video as well, not just photos? In that case, the RF 15-35mm lens would be my choice. In fact, it is my choice, as it is the lens I use most of the time. I hope this has been helpful. If you're curious as to how much these lenses cost where you are, I have affiliate links down below, which you are free to check out. If you're looking to upgrade your photography and videography skills, you might want to check out some of the other reviews on my channel. You can access these playlists by clicking the links below or the card in the top right corner. I've reviewed all sorts of lenses from the Canon EF 50mm f1.4 and EF 50mm f1.8 to the Canon RF 15-35mm f2.8 L IS USM and the Canon RF 85mm f1.2 L USM. Do you have any questions? Feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. If you'd like to purchase any of the items I've mentioned in this video or see how much they cost in your country, I have a link down below where you can view them. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe and hit that bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.